Welcome everyone today. Today we'll be talking about how we won our right to vote and how we can protect it with some information on the Constitutional Convention. So first, let us introduce what is UAW Member Action. UAW Member Action is a network of UAW members. We support each other in our fight for stronger contracts, to better understand and enforce our rights, and to make positive changes by exercising our rights within our union. This webinar is for all UAW members. We can all share information in this webinar with our coworkers, tell them about the importance of direct democracy and direct elections within our union. It's also for members who are interested in becoming delegates for the upcoming 2026 Constitutional Convention and special bargaining conventions for the Big Three. Today, we'll be talking about why direct elections matter for us in the UAW, how we were able to win one member, one vote reforms, and how we can continue pursuing reforms at the Constitutional Convention next June in order to protect our right to vote in the future. So throughout this presentation, we'll have a couple Zoom polls just to gauge how much you already know about these topics. We would really appreciate your participation if you are able to. This is just to see if any of you have heard about the Constitutional Convention. Okay, thank you everyone for answering the poll. It looks like a lot of you have heard of delegates, but maybe haven't been a delegate yet. So next, let me introduce our speakers today. Our first speaker is Dan Maloney, who works at General Motors Components Holding and is the president of his local UAW 1097 in Rochester, New York. Dan has also been a delegate since 2006 and is also the president of the Rochester Labor Council and the Rochester and Genesee Valley Labor Federation. Next, we have Scott Oldison, who works at the Ford Chicago Assembly Plant and is head of trustees at his local UAW 551. Scott was also previously a delegate at the last three conventions. And last but not least is Wanda Withers, who is a retiree who worked for the state of Michigan in Employee Human Services and is a member of UAW Local 6000. Wanda has also served as a delegate to multiple constitutional conventions and special conventions, including the most recent 2022 Constitutional Convention. So thank you all for agreeing to join us today. First, we're going to talk about why direct elections of our top officers, called the International Executive Board in the UAW, are so important. So Dan, can you get us started off, please?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So many members at your local may not be aware much of what the International Union does or is engaged with international officer elections. It's important to convey that the International Executive Board, IEB, leads our entire union in between conventions and is responsible for the hiring and spending decisions of our union. The president and vice presidents are involved in major contract campaigns with large corporations, especially in the manufacturing industry. Regional directors guide the region by setting priorities, coordinating training, education, and organizing activities, and may also be involved in the grievance process and political lobbying. So who is in office makes a big difference in winning a strong contract when it comes time to bargain. And direct elections, unfortunately, are not very common in organized labor unions. Most unions use something called the delegate system, which indirectly elects top leaders. Each local union delegates who then go on to nominate and vote for top officials at regularly held conventions or conferences. That's a system we were using right up until one member, one vote. Of the top 20 largest unions in the country, in terms of membership, only 6 directly elect top leaders through a membership vote. The rest use the indirect delegate system. So we've seen that in unions with direct elections, members are far more likely to have a choice. This is important. A choice between multiple candidates and their respective programs for the union. In the 20 largest U.S. unions, last elections, only about 1/3 of delegate elections were contested, while about 2/3 of direct elections were contested. So direct elections aren't a silver bullet. If no one is nominated, they can still go uncontested. But we see it's less common for direct elections to be rubber stamps. We've seen in recent years how contested elections can spark revitalization of our union's members. Think about some of the biggest strikes and strike threats in the past couple of years, including the 2023 stand-up strike here in the UAW and the Teamsters 2023 UPS strike threat. Each of those unions has recently undergone contested direct elections and obviously led to better results. We've seen that firsthand, in particular in UAW. Members felt empowered to take action in order to win ambitious contract goals. Members were engaged and activated after feeling their voice was heard at the top. So how were things in the UAW when we had indirect elections under the delegate system? The UAW experienced years of embezzlement and corruption from our top leaders. I'm sure you all remember those bad old days, including 2 former presidents. Officials stole union funds and were bribed with luxuries many members could only dream of. We ended up with weaker contract negotiations, and neglected to hear member input during bargaining and contract campaigns. These corrupt IEB officials were elected under the indirect delegate system and achieved unchecked power with no accountability to the membership. Furthermore, their positions went uncontested at convention. Lived it. While the delegate system may have some advantages, it has many problems. In the delegate system, incumbent leaders are favored as they have access to the financial, legal, and organizational resources of the union. Top leaders are also not accountable to the membership under the delegate system, as they are insulated from members by a layer of delegates. It becomes difficult for anyone to challenge incumbent leadership and run for office if they cannot get past the current delegates. New leaders are only brought in when current leaders retire or leave office. Lack of challengers results in less debate over important issues. In that part, new leaders are brought in when current leaders retire or leave office. They generally are handpicked successors, so you get more of the same. Additionally, delegates under our current constitution are not accountable to the locals that elect them, and they may not vote in their members' best interest. Delegates experience pressure to vote along with top leadership. They fear retaliation if they vote a different way. The end result was a weaker, more passive union with the potential for corruption and top leadership. We all lived it. I've personally been threatened and had my local threatened by the old corrupt leadership. How did we get one member, one vote in the UAW? The next poll, We'll see if you already know the answer to that question. How the UAW ended up with one member, one vote for top officer elections. See the question before you. Did we pass a referendum letting members choose? Was it imposed by a third-party monitor? Did previous IEB officials give us this right? Or was it imposed by the Department of Justice and the UAW? So we previously mentioned the corruption scandal that was brought to light in the fall of 2019. Coincidentally, when a lot of us in the UAW were on strike, in the General Motors department for sure. The Department of Justice brought charges against 12 former officials, including 2 presidents. The UAW and Department of Justice agreed to enter a consent decree in 2020 that would place the union under the supervision of a third-party independent monitor. Part of this agreement was to allow the members to decide whether to keep the indirect delegate system or to directly elect our IEB officers. Reformers organized around this referendum and turned out thousands of voters in 2021. The referendum passed 63% of voters supporting direct elections. Thank God. All right. The next election for IEB officers will be in the fall of 2026 coming up, and we will be under supervision of the monitor to ensure fair elections take place. However, the monitor's supervision may end in 2027. After that, there's no longer a requirement for independent supervision of our union's top officer elections, and election administration would fall under the supervision of the IEB. This poses a clear conflict of interest. Additionally, while the membership of our union decides to adopt direct elections, delegates at future conventions could decide to overturn the will of the membership. We must prioritize protecting the rights to vote going into the next constitutional convention to ensure future democracy. In another example, lost my page, guys. Let's look at some examples of the possibilities. Other unions have been in similar situations as ours. For example, the Laborers International, LIUNA, also experienced years of corruption and racketeering and entered into a consent decree with the Department of Justice. LIUNA held 3 independently supervised direct elections for contested officer positions while under the consent decree. After the consent decree ended in 2010, LIUNA Executive Board eliminated direct elections and returned to the delegate system. One of the factors that made this possible was that recent elections had not been contested. So the executive board could make the case they were unnecessary. This shows the importance of engaging members in the election process. When it comes to union democracy, you either use it or you lose it. Another example, the Teamsters Union also experienced major issues with corruption and organized crime. They were charged with corruption and threatened with government receivership. Reformers had been lobbying for direct elections instead. The DOJ and the union settled for a consent decree in 1989. In contrast to the UAW, this consent decree itself mandated one member, one vote. It wasn't up to the members or delegates to secure direct elections for the future. Nonetheless, Teamster members and activists were still and bill are key to bringing about democratic reforms that made direct elections function better and more fairly. For example, they have an independent supervisor who oversees their elections. Even though they are no longer under federal monitorship, their election rules also establish the right for candidates to campaign in parking lots, both their own employer and other employers. The reforms that Teamsters have been able to achieve are thanks to an active and involved membership willing to protect their rights. Many of these efforts were led by Teamsters for a Democratic Union, a reform movement that has organized for 50 years within the Teamsters.
Thanks, Dan.
That is
That's
the end of my section.
yes. Thank you so
Thanks for
much for
paying
that
attention.
information. So what can we do as UAW members, leaders, and activists to protect our right to vote in the future? Next, we'll hear from Scott on some next steps that we can take.
Thanks, Allie, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks to Dan for his presentation. But really, what we're up against now is trying to figure out how we can protect our hard-won right to vote. So a couple of things come to mind. First, we can introduce measures into the UAW Constitution to make it more difficult for future delegates to do what they did in LIUNA, in the laborers union, to overturn their direct election system. We also need to ensure that elections are fair. And to do that, we can look to the Teamsters example that Dan just presented to us too. So there are a lot of measures that can be taken, but all of you can be involved in this process. You can bring resolutions for constitutional amendments to your local. By proposing these resolutions to your local, you are being part of the process to reform our Constitution to make it more just for all of us, right? This Constitution covers everyone, and we want to make sure that it's fair for everybody. And we want to make sure that future delegates cannot take away our right to directly elect our international officers. So we've drafted a resolution that is aimed at protecting our right to vote. And Allie's going to drop a link to this in the chat. But in a nutshell, it talks a little bit about how we got that. What Dan was just telling us, how we got the direct elections, and it was won by a 2/3 vote of the members that voted, and also it was previously submitted to multiple constitutional conventions, and it didn't pass under the delegate system. The delegates did not vote to give away their power to the membership. So what can we do to protect that right? Well, we can change Article 10 of the Constitution so that any amendment to the mail vote by a secret ballot method has to require a referendum of the entire membership. We can put that in the Constitution. And we can also put in that section can only be amended by a referendum vote of the entire membership. So that is a way to protect our Constitution and our right to vote from being stolen from us by future delegates. So I believe that we have the link to that in the chat now. So please open that link, download it, and take it to your next union meeting and propose that we make it harder for future delegates to overturn the will of the membership. Let's go to the next slide. And so we, in addition to the resolution, we can also show how broadly the direct election is supported by members by having members pledge that they want to protect our hard-won right to vote. There's a pledge that Allie will drop in the chat. And in that, by signing up to that pledge, you're joining a list of UAW members that says, we want to protect our right to vote. And you can share that pledge with your coworkers. And then when the time comes for the election of delegates to the next constitutional convention, which should take place in early spring next year, you can ask those delegates, did you sign this pledge? Or will you sign this pledge? And get them on record committing to their willingness to protect our hard-won right to vote and protect the will of the membership. So you also may be wondering, can I become a delegate myself and support measures to propose direct elections at the next constitutional convention? And the answer is yes. Any member that has been a member for at least 1 year and at least, I believe it's 3 months in their local union can run for delegate in your next delegate elections. Keep an eye on your union bulletin boards for announcements about the next delegate elections. So let's kind of review for a second here. We want to protect our right to vote. We want to put in there that in order to change it back to the convention system, it has to be a referendum of the membership. We also want to put rules in place that allow for fair elections. So we need to consider those resolutions, and we're going to be working on those over the next month or two. But we want to get those passed also that make it fair and a level playing field for all candidates that are running for office. We also want to make sure that you know what the process is if you want to sign up to be a delegate. So pay attention to your bulletin boards and pay attention to any emails or text messages that we may send out letting you know that the delegates, that the call letter has gone out and the delegate elections are impending. And if you know somebody that's in leadership now, ask them to sign the pledge to protect one member, one vote. So thank you so much for allowing me to give this part of the presentation. And I'm going to pass it back over to Allie.
Thanks, Scott. I'm glad everyone has gotten a chance to at least look at the pledge and hopefully start signing it soon and talking to their coworkers about signing it as well. Now that we've talked about what we can do to protect our right to vote for IEB officers, let's talk about a big event coming up next year. Well, within a year, within 6 months, the Constitutional Convention. So let's take a quick poll. Do you know what a delegate is? Do they represent members of your local? There's multiple correct answers to this poll. Do they vote on amendments and resolutions at the convention? Do they attend special bargaining conventions and or handle grievances? I guess if your delegate is also a grievance handler, D would technically be correct, but let's hear then from Wanda about what do delegates do and what is the Constitutional Convention. Wanda, can you share with us?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Glad to see that you're on the call. Delegates are the biggest component of the convention, but they're members just like you. Members of each local vote directly on who will represent them as delegates to the convention. Delegates have a great responsibility to collectively decide on which amendments will pass, which resolutions to adopt, and which candidates to nominate for the executive board and regional director. Now we'll discuss some basics of the Constitutional Convention. The regular convention is held every 4 years, and the next convention is scheduled for June 2026 in Detroit, Michigan. Special bargaining conventions also occur in the lead up to the major contract campaigns in manufacturing, including the big three automakers. Delegates that are elected for the Constitutional Convention will also attend the Special Bargaining Convention. Conventions are run by parliamentary procedures, including Robert's Rules of Order and UAW Convention rules. Here are some quick polls before we move on. Changing or amending the UAW Constitution is one way we can shape the direction of the Union. Do you know who can propose amendments to the Constitution? A is the Federal Monitor. B, any individual UAW member. C, UAW locals that vote on and pass amendments proposed by members. Or D, the Department of Justice.
Okay, Wanda, can you share with us now who can make amendments to the Constitution?
In the lead up to the convention, locals have the ability to propose amendments, vote on them, and pass them. Amendments can also be submitted by the International Executive Board, the IEB. The IEB will select from the pool of delegates people to serve on a Constitution Committee. This committee will take up all the amendments submitted by the locals or officers and can suggest additional amendments as well. At the convention, delegates will be able to debate and vote on amendments, but the Constitution can only be amended when a majority of the delegates approve them. Only when a majority approves them. Now, one example of an amendment to the Constitution that passed at the last convention was the one that would enable strike benefits to begin on the first day of a strike rather than day 8. This amendment is beneficial for workers who go out on shorter strikes and ensures that they have strong bargaining power during the contract negotiations. Another is one of the capped campaign contributions of $2,000 per member per candidate, as well as restricting contributions to UAW members. This amendment ensures that IEB candidates will rely on UAW member backing and cannot be influenced by a small pool of large contribution donors. Similar to these amendments, locals can also pass resolutions. Like the Constitution Committee, the IEB also selects from the pool of delegates people to serve on resolution committees. This committee considers and proposes resolutions. Delegates are also able to debate and vote on resolutions at the convention. These resolutions have the ability to shape the course of the Union for the next several years. For example, at past conventions, resolutions have been passed to enact changes within our Union, which build power through organizing and educating. Resolutions can also shape how the Union interacts with state and national governments and influences positions on economy, trade, health care, and Social Security. Importantly, candidates for the international executive positions are nominated at the convention. Delegates are able to nominate candidates for president, secretary treasurer, vice president, and regional director. While delegates are responsible for nominating candidates, it is up to the membership to decide who is elected. The next direct election for IEB positions will occur in the fall of 2026. Now, if you're interested in passing local resolutions or amendments, make sure to check the timeline on when important deadlines occur. If the Constitutional Convention is set up to happen June 15th through the 19th, 2026, that means we need to work backwards to see when our deadlines are. 6 weeks prior to the convention is the deadline for resolutions and amendments to be submitted to the International Secretary Treasurer. 6 weeks prior. 90 days before the convention is the latest the call to convention is made, although it has happened earlier in the past. This call to convention will be sent to each local and will include information on how many delegates each local will be allowed. Each local will call for nominations for their delegates after they receive the call. So keep a lookout for the notice and inquire within your local leaders if you don't hear anything. Working back on the timeline now, it's time to start thinking about the resolutions and amendments you want to pass at your local level. It's not too early now to begin proposing, discussing, and planning meetings to vote on resolutions and amendments. Now, if you are eligible to be a delegate, if you're interested in becoming a delegate, check that you are eligible. Delegates must be dues-paying members in good standing for 12 months prior to the convention date. So that's 12 months prior to June 2026. You must also be a member of the local that is electing you for that at least 3 months. If you're a newly chartered or affiliated local, your local must have paid 2 months full per capita tax. These details will be provided in the call to convention that your local receives. So keep a lookout and ask your local leaders for the information. It's December now, but it's not too early to decide if you want to run for delegate. Check with your local in January or February to see if the call of convention has gone out, how many delegates your local will receive. Keep in mind that the deadline for local delegate elections to be completed is 30 days prior to the start of the convention. So make sure everything is finalized before May 16th. It's also important to abide by the UAW Constitution during your local delegate elections. Working backwards on our timeline again, local delegates elections should be completed at least 30 days prior to the convention as mentioned. A local meeting to nominate delegates should take place at least 7 days before local elections. And notice should be given to members that the meeting will occur, and people should be nominated for delegate at least 7 days prior to that. All members should be given notice of when and where local elections are occurring at least 15 days in advance of polling. Nominations and elections for members of your local elections committee may vary based on your local. So check your local bylaws for more information. And thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Wanda. Becca, can you share with us some resources that members can use to help organize, to help enact these changes that we just talked about?
Hi everyone, I'm Becca. I'm also an organizer for UAW Member Action, and I just have a few quick announcements before we wrap up here. So before you leave the webinar, I want to ask everyone again to please take a moment to sign the pledge to protect our vote. I see a bunch of people in the chat saying they already signed, and that's great. It'll only take 1 minute, and you should sign it while you're here or right when you get off the webinar. If you believe that we need to take action to ensure that direct elections continue, please don't just show your support on this pledge, but use the pledge to talk to other members of your local about it too. We encourage you to take the resolution that we shared to your locals for discussion, and both the pledge and the resolution are at that link in the chat on the same page as the pledge. You can also reach out to us if you want to learn more about running for delegate. We can help you research how many delegates were allocated to your local or unit in the past, and we can help you approach your election. Next slide. So when you go to work this week, please talk to members of your local about what you learned today. This is the flyer that you can request when you fill out the pledge. You should share why direct elections for IUB officers are important with members of your local. Like Dan said, a lot of people are kind of tuned out from this layer of our union, so we have to take active steps to engage them. Ask them to sign the pledge, and if they agree, you can build toward a membership meeting where you can propose, discuss, and vote on the resolution. So we can send you a batch of flyers to use as a tool. Let us know if you're having any trouble, and feel free to reach out to our email if you have any questions. And then finally, we want to ask you to take the next step by joining UAW Member Action. This organization is powered by UAW members like you all in the room. We're channeling the energy of the UAW into a lasting network of members trained to lead and organize. So if you enjoyed this webinar, or if you've appreciated our trainings for grievance handlers this year, if you want to become a part of the positive change we're making in our union, please become a member of our network today. It's just $25 per year, and you can join at the link in the chat, or you can go to memberaction.org/join. I'm already seeing that some people have joined in the chat. You'll also receive a discount on the cool t-shirt that you saw on the last slide. Right now, you get $20 off that t-shirt, so it's just $10 when you join. And you can see that it shows you're ready for the fight ahead, May Day 2028. So thanks everyone. Excited to see that people are signing the pledge and joining UAW Member Action. Now we're going to get into your questions. So use the Q&A tool, please, rather than the chat to share your questions. And we're going to be going back to the panelists who are the expert delegates to answer some of these questions. Okay. So here's our first question. What's one thing that you wish you had known before you became a delegate? Wanda, do you want to go ahead?
I'd like to answer that. Yes.
Please, go ahead.
When I became a delegate, I didn't know that they never stopped. When you come to the convention may start at 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and it runs all the way through to a set time. They usually stop at 4. They could extend it, but there is no break. There is no lunch. So bringing a few little things to eat at your table is important, and knowing that all the information that you receive, you're going to be voting all day long. And it's kind of expensive. A cup of coffee is $2.50, so I learned to have my coffee before I got there because I have to have my coffee. That's just one of the things that I wish I had known before I became a delegate.
Thanks, Wanda. That's a great practical tip. Anyone else? Scott, do you want to answer next?
Yeah, one thing that I was puzzled by maybe in retrospect, it wasn't so puzzling, but when they, at the first constitutional convention I attended in 2010, we got the amendments to the, we got a whole package of stuff at the beginning. But what we didn't get was the amendments to the Constitution that they were going to propose. They literally were passing those out as the committee was reading them to us. And then we're expected to soak all that information in and, make an informed decision when we didn't have all the information at our fingertips to study and to try and figure out what this language meant. That changed going forward. At the second convention that I attended, I made a motion at the end of the first day to have all those amendments available to the delegates at the beginning of the second day, and they did. They passed them out as packets at the tables, and I did that again at the third convention that we attended, and they complied with it. So I'm saying all that to say that if you see something that you don't think is going appropriately, say something. And maybe you can be the one to make the change that needs to be made to make this a more democratic union.
Thank you, Scott. That's a great answer. Delegates aren't just the highest authority, in some senses in the union, but also of the convention itself. So if something's going wrong at the convention, the delegates are the people who have to speak up and fix it. Dan, do you want to respond to that one?
Yeah, you're going to be, as a delegate, you're under a lot of pressure. People try to invite you into their caucus. In my case, it was the administrative caucus. If you say something wrong, you get bounced. So it's good to have some friends. When you bring forth a resolution, an amendment, or a motion on the floor, you're going to need someone to second that, right? You're going to need support. So it's good to caucus with some folks. And, this is one good way to do it, member action. So you're definitely going to need help. I've seen Scott up there enough. Go to the microphone, and absolutely my pleasure to yell out second, stand up and support whatever the amendment or the motion is. Strength in numbers with solidarity, so you got to make some friends out there.
Thanks, Dan. That's a great point. You don't want to go into the convention, thinking about your priorities for the first time. You want to be talking to people in advance and building your support and making a plan. And same goes if you're thinking about passing a proposal at your local union meeting, right? Allie and I and all the panelists here, I'm sure, are happy to help you try to make a plan to pass something at your local meeting. So reach out if you need help doing that. Okay, we're going to go to our next question now, which is, are laid-off workers eligible to run for delegate? With the current economy, it's going to be a hot-button issue at many facilities. Thanks for that question. Does anyone know the answer?
I believe the answer is it depends. And I really hate to put it that way, but if you're on a temporary layoff, then yes, you are eligible to run. If you're on an indefinite layoff, what I would recommend is that you make sure that you go into the union hall on a monthly basis to ask that your out of work credits be extended. Under Article 16 of the Constitution, workers that are on medical leave, that are on unemployment, that are laid off, they have a right to out of work credits where you don't have to pay your union dues, but you can maintain your membership. So that would be my advice, is to, if you're unfortunately on an indefinite layoff, make sure that you stop into the union hall and maintain your membership status, and that will allow you to be able to be be nominated for a delegate position. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else have anything to add to that? Nope, pretty thorough answer. Okay, thanks, Scott. Our next question is about what delegates do when it's not convention time. It's a role that has many responsibilities, right? Constitutional convention is just one of them. What are the biggest responsibilities that delegates have between conventions or after the Constitutional Convention is over? Dan, I'm going to pass this one to you because I think it might be relevant.
So we do have a special convention coming up in Region 9, right? We have to fill vacancies as they occur between conventions. And this one is a delegate election. I'm not happy about this. I wish it was one member, one vote to elect our Region 9 director. It's not. So now it's up to us to stay educated on the candidates. And as always, it's on the candidates to reach out to delegates, right? Tell us what they're all about, where they stand. So that's just one. And I know that I stay in touch with a lot of other delegates and talk about some potential resolutions or amendments for the upcoming convention, and work to get those passed. Internal organizing and work to get those passed at the local, become part of the next convention.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone have anything else to add about the role of delegates between conventions?
When you're elected as a delegate, you're elected for 4 years. So, or for that Constitution. So reviewing that Constitution and staying in contact with your members is critical. You will be, they have special elections and they have the special bargaining election the following year. So you will still be going to the convention to vote and be a part of that. The special convention usually isn't as long, it's usually a few days as opposed to a week, but you're always going to be involved.
Yeah, and I'd just add that there's not other than a special convention for special bargaining convention or to elect a regional director, there's not a lot of roles for a delegate in between conventions. But what you should be doing is keeping the pulse of your membership, right? So that when the next convention rolls around and you decide to run again, that you know what your members want. You can run on that to get elected again. And then you can bring their concerns to the convention. But, keeping in contact with your membership and understanding their issues is going to be key.
Thank you, Scott. So just to summarize, staying in touch with your members, staying in touch with other delegates and thinking about how to pass things that are important to your members, and other special conventions that might arise because of vacancy elections or bargaining conventions in our union. So we're going to move on to the next question. We've got about 5 minutes left and some more great questions. So we might go a little bit over if people can hang with us. We've got another question about eligibility. Are retired members eligible to run for delegate?
Our local allows for retirees to run as long as they were in good standing at the time that they retired. So check your bylaws to see what your eligibility is, because retirees can run.
Thanks, Wanda. How about other locals? Is that common across other locals, Scott, Dan?
Well, the Constitution guarantees membership status to retirees, and they enjoy all the benefits of membership, including the ability to run for convention delegate and to vote for convention delegate. So the short answer is yes. I was just a little more long-winded than that.
Okay, so if you're a retiree in good standing, you're also eligible to run for delegate. Now we've got another question about who's included in the convention. We've got a member in TOP wondering if TOP is included in the convention. This member said, I'm curious because, sorry, I lost the question for a second. I'm curious because everybody talks about 2028 contract negotiations, but my local's contract is up in 2027. Is this a separate convention?
Yeah, all dues paying members in good standing are eligible. Pretty simple. So across the UAW.
Thanks, Dan. Yes, Scott, you want to add to that?
Yeah, each and every local in the UAW is going to get a call letter, and that call letter is going to say exactly how many delegates your local has been allotted, and that's based on how many members are paying dues in your local, right? And is the only way your local would not be included is if they fell behind on their per capita taxes. So, we all locals collect the dues for the members, and then they forward the portion that goes to the strike fund and the portion that goes to the international general fund to the international. And if we fall behind on those, then you can be excluded. Your local can be excluded from the convention. So that's why it's important to stay on top of your financial reports on a monthly basis and make sure that your local is paid up on their per capita taxes. But every local will get representation that is in good standing, including top. Yes, including top, higher ed. Yes, IPS, everyone.
Thanks, Scott. So every sector is included in the Constitutional Convention, and when we talk about 2028, that's mainly because we're excited for the big three negotiations, and we're excited about the call for unions to align major contracts for 2028, but we know not every unit's going to be expiring in 2028. Okay, this might be our last question. We'll see if we can get to two more. But here's a question about elections. Beyond just one member, one vote, how can we improve people's knowledge on the candidates being voted on? Do any of the panelists want to speak to this one?
Becky, you kind of cut out for me. Can you repeat that? The question?
Yeah. Sorry about that. Let me repeat that. So the question is, beyond just one member, one vote, how can we improve people's knowledge on the candidates being voted on? So, improving turnout, making more informed voters. These are things that we have to try to accomplish beyond just getting people the right to vote, right? How are we going to do that?
I'm going to probably propose a resolution, right, and trying to take money out of it. I'm not even a fan of that $2,000 limit. I think that's far too high, right? So folks that are, say, a regional director, you're going to squeeze your staff for $2,000 each, and they're going to know, right, that's the boss. If I want to stay appointed, I'm going to do the right thing and send them my check. So, and when you're on the shop floor, you might not have that same leverage. I don't like that at all. I think folks should there should be a number of locals that have to get behind a candidate, certain amount of locals, and maybe across a certain couple of regions. There's got to be a better way. Set some kind of a bar, and once you hit it, all those folks will be able to post up their name, their face, their platform, and have UAW put that out for all members to see, right? Something like that. Take money out of elections. We try to do it at the national level. Let's do it at our union level as well. So we'll set a bar that's reasonable, but not everyone that just gets pissed off over a grievable issue on the shop floor raises their hand and runs for president or regional director. Set a bar to make sure that we got people that are willing to do the work, have some knowledge base and some support, run for office, but then allow their entire platform to be put up on a website. Equal opportunity at that point. That's my feelings on the subject.
Thanks, Dan. Wanda, do you have some ideas on this? Go ahead.
Well, for the first time after the last convention, the members were able to post in Solidarity magazine each of the bios that were submitted. And that was kind of helpful because we've never had that before. But it's back to keeping in contact with your members, going to their union meetings, going to and letting people know where the people that are running, where they stand. I'm from the state of Michigan, so I'm part of TOP. And a lot of times what we talk about is, well, they always talk about the auto, and they don't talk about the TOP. And we have to start getting more involved so that they recognize some of the challenges we have in the other sectors of the UAW.
Thanks, Wanda. Scott, you want to wrap us up on this question?
Yeah. Well, a funny story about the $2,000 limit, and it is, kind of high, but the original proposal was for no limit, right? It was unlimited. And delegates at the last convention suspended the rules, which takes a 2/3 vote of all the delegates. I've never seen the delegates do that before. We suspended the rules so that we could put that $2,000 cap on there. We could have said it at anything, but somebody came up with the number 2,000, and that's what passed. But it was pretty remarkable to see the amount of democracy that actually happened at the last convention. I'm looking forward to really much more democracy at the next one. Another idea that we pitched to the monitor was public financing. That didn't get approved, but there's no reason that the delegates to the next convention or the one after that couldn't approve public financing for, by public financing, I mean anybody that reaches a certain level of support, maybe getting petitions signed or something like that, a certain number of petitions signed, would then have an amount that they can use to send out mailers or something like that. We also, on the last election, had webcasts where at least the top officers got to debate, right? It was, it wasn't really a debate. It wasn't back and forth, but there was a moderator that asked questions of the candidates. So I think we have those things kind of there. We just need to make sure that they are still in place once the monitorship is over. So that's where it's going to be important to come up with these rules for going forward after the monitorship ends.
Thanks, everyone. So some ideas for initiatives that can help, future candidates get the word out to members. But it seems like the bottom line is kind of what Wanda shared, which is that if we want members to know about the candidates in our elections, we got to get out there and talk to them, right? So that's probably going to be the most important thing coming up next year. So let's all be bearing that in mind. And with that, we're going to go to our last question, and then we'll wrap up after this. I think it's going to be a quick one. I know that different locals have sort of different structures. Some amalgamated locals have joint councils. Locals have executive boards. Even units might have their own membership meetings. Is there a specific kind of membership meeting where you need to pass a resolution in order to bring it to the convention? Can a joint council pass a resolution that goes to the convention? Can a unit, or how does that work? Are any of our panelists able to answer that?
I'll take a stab at it. We don't have a joint council in ours, so maybe Wanda could fill us in on that. But ours gets passed by the membership. It can be at a regular membership meeting, but often we call a special membership meeting for the purpose of considering resolutions, especially if there's a lot of interest and a lot of people are presenting resolutions. I think when it comes to the bargaining convention, especially, you'll see people submitting a lot of resolutions because this is what directly affects their paycheck and their conditions on the plant floor is the contract negotiations that'll be coming up. So that's what I would say. But I'd be curious to hear from Wanda about whether units get to pass them in unit meetings and also joint council.
Okay, I had to get my audio on. Members can pass resolutions and submit it to the resolution committee. Now, will it come out of the committee? Sometimes it doesn't. And I've been at conventions where many locals had submitted resolutions and they never came out of committee. This was the first time we were actually able to get the book, see and pull from the book and put it on the floor. That had never happened before the monitor, where resolutions were, there's a committee that looks at them. I think the resolutions committee, they're appointed by the IEB, selects from the delegates, and they look at the resolutions, and some of the resolutions never come out of the committee. They're put in the book and they're kind of glossed over. So submitting them, you can submit them to the resolutions committee and see what happens. And if you have delegates that end up at that committee, if they're not addressed, have your delegates pull that and ask to have that resolution pulled to the floor.
Yeah, we're an amalgamated local union, 1097. So we do have different units. And where we kind of our convergence is our executive board, right? The chair of each unit sits on our e-board. That's where we do all our information sharing. When they're unit meetings, one of them's about an hour and a half away of a drive from my local. So they hold their separate unit meetings. They have a resolution they vote on, they approve, they bring it to our executive board, and then we'll maybe refine it there and then bring it out for a motion on our general membership meetings, which they're all invited to. Not many come because of the travel distance. That's the way we handle it. All motions pretty much start at our executive board.
Thanks, Dan. So just to sum up, it sounds like in order to be submitted to the resolutions committee, which is the first step, you have to pass it in a local membership meeting. So not the joint council, not a unit membership meeting, but a local membership meeting. And different locals might have different procedures for how to get on the agenda. So talk to your recording secretary or reach out to us and we can try to help you get to the bottom of it. A sort of add-on to this question was, is it useful for different locals to try to pass this resolution? And I think our answer to that is absolutely, right? It only requires one local to technically bring it before the resolutions committee, but like Wanda was saying, not everything submitted gets brought out of committee, so it's important that we try to get this in the book so it can be visited at convention. And I think the more locals that end up passing this resolution, the better off we are there. Scott, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to add to that from Dan's answer, I'm pretty sure that it is unit meetings can pass these resolutions, right? It might have to be then submitted to the joint council, but if you wait for, if you have joint council set up, like for instance, Local 600 does, they never have, even though the Constitution requires an annual membership meeting, they don't have them. So, you would never get anything passed out that way. So I envision that, units would be passing them, and then those would get submitted to the joint council, who would probably just forward them to the resolutions committee and the constitution committee.
Yeah, just speaking of past practice, and that's kind of what we've been doing since my predecessors ran this local that I inherited. So,
Okay, so we can revise my last statement and say that a unit membership meeting or a local membership meeting is a place where you can pass one of these resolutions, we think. But if you have questions, reach out to us. Let's dig into the Constitution together and try to get to the bottom of your questions. So, okay, we want to wrap up now. We've gone a few minutes over. Thank you to everyone who stuck around. And thank you to everyone who asked a great question. We had a lot of really great engagement in this webinar. I really appreciate you all spending your Sunday afternoons with us, and to everyone who signed the pledge or took the step to join UAW Member Action today. We're excited to have you on board. So with that, I want to give a final thank you to our great panelists. Great job today, Wanda, Scott, Dan, and we'll say enjoy the rest of your Sundays and solidarity.